Hello. Today I hope I've got a bit of a treat. I've got a Vosne-Romanee here from Benjamin Leroux. This is the 2014 vintage of that. So we're in Burgundy. The wine is a Pinot Noir. And to my mind, Vosne-Romanee is the commune of Burgundy that gives the sort of the plushest, the most velvety, textured wines. There's an opulence and a richness to the wines, and there should be a lovely fresh lifted perfume as well on the end of them. Vosne itself sort of sits right in the heart of the Côte de Nuit. So the Côte de Nuit, the northern part of the Côte d'Or, the Golden Slopes, that's the part of Burgundy where most of the great Grand and Premier crus are located. Particularly Vosne sits between Clos Vougeot to the north and Nuit Saint-Georges to the south. Benjamin Leroux himself, talented winemaker who at the age of just 24 became the winemaker for a well-respected Domaine Comte Armand and stayed there for 15 years. In the course of that time in 2007, he set up his own negociant business, making wines bearing his name, and then left the domain to continue working in his own right. He now owns some vineyards and continues working with some partner growers, such as for this particular wine. The vineyard he takes this off there's about a hectare's worth of vines across two lieux-dits, Mazeret and La Violette, and they're both at the north of the commune when Violette borders on to Clos Vougeot, the Grand Cru at the north. And these are the vines, they're about 40 years old, so you should get reasonable restrictions on the yield of the fruit as a result of that. They're farmed according to the lutte raisonnée, the rational struggle, that's normally translated as. And that is a means of, I suppose, sustainable agriculture, a low input agriculture is probably a better way of saying that. So you not completely eschewing the use of chemicals in viticulture, but only using pesticides, herbicides where absolutely necessary, and not necessarily spraying the whole vineyard as a blanket, just doing those areas where that's required. So, as I say, low input winemaking. From the point of view of Benjamin, there are a couple of things about this wine that don't quite fit into what he normally does. There's a higher percentage of the fruit is left as whole berries during fermentation, so that should help to give a lovely juiciness to the wine. And slightly more oak than usual. This gets about 25% new oak for its aging, although it ages in 300 litre barrels, so larger cooperage than is standard. The winemaking is allowed to take a fairly natural course. Fermentation is with indigenous yeasts. I believe maceration normally lasts for about 15 days. The wines are bottled without fining and filtration. So there's an attempt to keep this as pure as possible from vineyard into bottle. So let's have a look at this, shall we? First of all, the colour. The colour is it's a medium ruby red. The pigmentation is quite dark, but not particularly deep. I can easily see through it. The red note, there's no blue or purple note to it at all. In fact, I almost wonder if there's a slight brown hint to it. It's not necessarily a brown rim, but there's a darkness to the colour, certainly, that suggests some sort of maturity. Gosh, the aromas, that's where the maturity is starting to come through again. It's a very harmonious, relatively open nose. The notes there, there's a sort of a pruny, very ripe red plum sort of lifted note to the fruit. I suppose that's allowing a little bit of cedary oak to come through, cedary toasty, but it's all well integrated with the fruit, and so I suppose it's showing as a bit of a sort of a sweet spice note. And then behind that, there's a developed, truffly, earthy, very attractive note coming through that Promises quite a lot for the palate, so let's have a taste of that. There are two things that are quite evident immediately. There's lovely mouth-watering acidity, but there's also quite a fair weighty structure of quite fine, quite drying tannins there, and that's allowing a sort of a cedary note to come through. The weight of the wine, actually, I mean, considering this is a village level, it almost feels like it could be a Premier Cru or something. There seems to be a reasonable body to it. There's a warmth, a ripeness and openness to it. Then, again, you've got that sort of slightly pruny, high-toned fruit at the beginning. Prunes. There's a red note, so taking it back to the plum, and there's sort of a slight licoricey, bitter core. The alcohol appeared. There seems to be an alcohol warmth, but actually that's more at the front of the mouth. And as you get to the end of the wine, the acidity reasserts the freshness. There's more of a sort of lifted red fruit perfume coming out, and then there are cedary notes as well. The mid palate, as it's here in my mouth, it's opening, and we're getting that, or I'm getting that truffly, more truffly actually, less of the earthy note than you saw on the nose. The flavours are lasting quite nicely because of the freshness. Not exceptional length, but good. And that is that mature red fruit coming through. There's been this sort of lifted perfume and then the mature red fruit. So I think this is a nice example of a relatively modern style, clean, fruity wine, but it's also got that sort of slightly more developed, maturing notes starting to show there. I think the slightly drying nature of the tannins means you could probably leave this for a year or two and it would help to smooth and soften out. But there is that lovely sort of truffly fruit and velvety texture, the two working in unison on the mid palate, that make this a very typical Vosne-Romanee. So yeah, really enjoyable example. I'm interested to try more wines from Benjamin Leroux. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this of interest. Bye now.